Kha'Zix is a monstrous assassin jungler capable of carrying games by himself with his unbelievable damage and mobility. Kha'Zix can snowball games with ease but does really struggle to do any kind of damage when he does get behind. Kha'Zix also does have a tough time against tanks and teams who group up where he can't get that isolation damage. So for your runes, Dark Harvest is really the one you're going to benefit the most from. It helps you execute your enemies throughout the game, which is amazing alongside your isolated Q damage. After that, finish the domination runes off with damage and healing. For your secondary runes, grab yourself Absolute Focus and Water Walking for some more damage and movement speed. For your skill order, you want to max Q first. This is where the majority of your damage comes from. Then go for W, as you're likely going to be evolving that second, and it does some amazing damage in teamfights, and then finally your E to finish. So for your mythic items, you can go for a Duskblade of Drakthar. This is amazing on Kha'Zix as it complements his kit and playstyle so perfectly. It gives him a ton of lethality and burst, and also another stealth element alongside his ultimate. You can also go for an Eclipse, which gives lethality, movement speed and a cheeky shield. And last but not least, there is also the extra option of Prowler's Claw, which isn't quite as popular, but some players can really abuse this item well with its inbuilt gap closer alongside its tasty burst. For some common options, Yumu's Ghostblade gives Kha'Zix some tasty movement speed, allowing him to run at his opponents and take them out whilst also giving him tons more damage. Edge of Night will give Kha'Zix a spell shield, which helps him do his job a lot easier without getting punished for it. The Collector makes Kha'Zix so hard to deal with by increasing his burst on another level with its insane execute damage. Cyrilda's Grudge also gives Kha'Zix a slow when he hits his abilities, which is amazing with his evolved W, alongside some extra damage and that 30% armor penetration. For some defensive options, a Guardian Angel is great in the unfortunate event that you do get taken out in a team fight. This will give you a second chance and allow you to get back in the fight and punish some more enemies. More of Mortius is also going to help you out when you're versus lots of magic damage with its juicy shield. There are a few situational items as well. A Chempunk Chainsword is definitely necessary when you're versus heavy healing compositions, and picking up that early Executioner's Calling can be pivotal versus certain champions. Serpent's Fang is also a great pickup to burst through enemies with inbuilt or itemized shields. So against easier matchups, you can look to farm up for free and feel pretty confident walking around the map knowing that you should be able to outduel these junglers if you do come across them. Getting an early Oracle Lens will help you gank more effectively and may enable you to surprise and kill the enemy jungler from the fog of war. Remember that Kha'Zix snowballs really well, so if you do get an early lead, the game's going to be pretty much over. Against harder matchups though, Kha'Zix is very vulnerable whilst farming due to him losing that isolation damage as well as his main abilities being on cooldown. Make sure you don't get invaded by these junglers who can easily outduel you early game, and instead focus on getting to that item power spike where you'll become the assassin that you were born to be. Kha'Zix doesn't actually offer any CC, but he does offer a ridiculous amount of damage, so if you pair him with any allied champions that bring heavy setup crowd control, make Kha'Zix infinitely harder to deal with. For your jungle pathing, Kha'Zix can actually get to level 3 really quickly by prioritising isolated camps like either Buff or Gromp. This can allow him to gank really quickly and surprise enemies early on. For example, on blue side you can go for red buff, then Raptors, and then Gromp for a super fast level 3 and gank as early as 2 minutes and 40 seconds. If you want to full clear though, go for red buff, Raptors, blue buff, Gromp and then Wolves, and then head to Scuttlecrab for your level 4. For red side you can do very similar clear like that, or even go buff then Gromp then buff if you want to gank early. So in the early game, as Kha'Zix you aren't quite as strong as you want to be yet due to gaining so much damage and threat from just a few items and evolved abilities. Make it your main priority to get that early damage item as quickly as possible, but still contribute to ganks early on with your gap closer in your E and your Q dealing some decent damage. Once you get your ultimate, you become so much harder to deal with due to being able to bypass wards with your stealth and gap close easier. You also gain a lot of power when you hit level 6 due to evolving your Q. Most Kha'Zix players in Season 11 are evolving Q and then W then E or R depending on the preference. You can absolutely shred Scuttlecrabs and objectives like Dragon early on, so make sure you're abusing this with your isolated damage. In teamfights, it's going to be your main job to assassinate as many high value targets as possible. Try and find enemies when they're isolated and burst them down before they even have a chance to react. As Kha'Zix, it's vital that you're setting up vision denial to catch split targets or look to flank and get behind teams so you can assassinate their high value targets. Remember to utilise your stealth to get in and around fights as you see fit, as this is key to staying alive alongside dealing your maximum damage. You also want to avoid enemies with high crowd control or high peel unless you can catch them out alone. These are the main types of opponents that can deal with you, unlike those fragile carries. Just a quick few tips to finish off. Kha'Zix can deal bonus magic damage due to his passive Unseen Threat, which procs when an enemy loses sight of him or when he uses his ultimate. You want to try and abuse this for your optimal burst damage. You can use your Q whilst flying towards your target in your E. This is going to save time and increase your burst damage overall. Remember that if you're in the explosion radius of your W, it actually heals you too, which can be crucial in those early skirmishes and duels, or key to staying alive and winning teamfights. That's going to wrap up our short guide on Kha'Zix. We hope it helped, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.